is nationally only 52% of our black boys graduate high school. 52%. Almost half of our boys drop out of school. And when they drop out, they're 3 times is likely to be incarcerated. Also, only 10% of our black boys can read, by 8th grade, can read at a proficiency level. 10%. So, you talked about, Steve, the idea of a young man and dealing with this psychic pain, right? And you talk about the call to the mother. And I want to get into, one is the biggest issue I have around this issue is the truant father, which is a question behind me, right? I grew up single parented with my mom and struggled and had to make up archetypes to get through, father archetypes. And so I want to talk about the impact that truant fathers have on the black community, not only on the black community, but the impact it has on the success and future of our young men.
So, you know, one of the things I try to do at times such as these is to make light of this, only because if I didn't, I don't know how I would make it through these conversations. I could be in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or in New Haven, Connecticut, or in Hartford, and it's the same. Saying that 10% of the boys are, by 8th grade are reading at proficient is in many ways like saying to someone $1 billion. You just don't understand what it means to have no children be able to. That's because you realize 10% is none, right? I mean, if you're a 3-point shooter, if you're shooting 10%, you're not very good. There's nothing. There's very few statistics in which someone can say you do it 10% of the time. You think, whew. If you had a car that had a 10% chance of making it back to its destination, you would not get in the car. You wouldn't even consider it. Nah, I'll walk. It's raining. I'm good. So, I'm going to get to the part about the fathers in a moment. But I have to have a conversation, if I'm in New Haven, about how bad your schools are. You have a mayor who's been mayor the entire life of all the kids who are in the school system, and that doesn't bother you that you have one of the worst school systems in America? There has to be a point at which we as a community have to get embarrassed by something. I mean, we got to be embarrassed by something. Okay, so y'all got some good basketball. Where are those kids going to college? Right. So y'all won a couple state championships. Bully for you. Those kids in the suburbs who you beat, going to college. Don't really care. You got to recognize that you didn't give birth to stupid kids. They're not stupid. There's nothing wrong with them. There's not an achievement gap. That's not what you're dealing with here. It's not like your kids cannot achieve. You have some high-tech equipment in there for kids who dropped out, and they can use it. In fact, if you give any kid in New Haven an iPod, an iPhone, a Razor, or whatever, this is the highest technology. I mean, we do understand that some of y'all who grew up with the phone on the wall, you had to untangle the thing. And if you grew up in projects like me and you only got basic cable, but you had the thing to twist it and you put the MacBook inside it, right? Okay, and maybe I'm the only one who's a criminal. But you understand that your kids are not stupid. They're not. It's not an achievement gap, it's an access gap. The issue is not one of whether or not they can learn. Your brains are born, everybody has different capacities, let's be clear. But it's not whether or not they can learn, they're not being taught. The bottom line is they're not being taught. Because those of us who either worked at a community college or teach at a community college, you see him and you think, he's bright, but it's just like he doesn't know the language. You can see that there's when you hear the word bright, and just stay there for a second, it actually is that. If you've ever worked with kids, you see a bright, they actually are physically bright. There's a certain light that emanates from inside them. They're bright. And it doesn't matter how old they are, it doesn't matter how poor they are, but they're bright. There's a certain light that exists in their eyes. But with so many of our children, they go dim. And one of the most frightening things that you can ever see is a child who's going dim. It just, you know, it's a void to get emotion, but it rips inside. I don't know how you could love a child and see a child go. They didn't do that to themselves. No one wakes up, they go to school with the expectation that at the end of the day they're going to have 6.5 hours more information than they had when they got there. So imagine if you paid to go somewhere and learn how to bake a cake, and 6.5 hours later you come out, you still can't cook. You, your husband, everybody else who paid for it, like, damn, man.